Good day, everyone. My task is to report about morphology. This is one of the topics in our course, Grammar of Contemporary Spoken Philippine Languages. Accordingly, morphology is the branch of linguistics that studies the structure of words and how they are formed. It looks at how smaller units of meaning, called morphemes, combine to create words. Morphemes can be roots, prefixes, suffixes, infixes, or circumfixes. In the context of contemporary spoken Philippine languages, morphology is essential for understanding how words are constructed and how meaning is conveyed. One is we have affixation. Affixation is a key feature where prefixes, infixes, suffixes, and circumfixes are attached to root words to indicate tense, aspect, voice, and other grammatical categories. For instance, in Tagalog, the prefix mag can be used to form verbs indicating future tense or potential actions. For example, magluto. In English, to cook. We also have reduplication. This is another common morphological process where part or all of a root word is repeated to express plurality, intensity, or repeated actions. In Cebuano, for example, lakaw-lakaw can mean walking around or strolling. We also have inflection and derivation. When you say inflection, this involves modifying words to express different grammatical forms like tense or case without changing the word's meaning. Derivation, on the other hand, creates new words with different meanings by adding affixes. We have here an inflection sample. For the root word basa, which is read in English, the past tense is bumasa, still read in English. Its present tense is bumabasa, reading in English. And its future tense, babasa, will read in English. For our derivation sample, for the root word linis, which is clean in English, its verb form is maglinis, to clean. Its adjective form, malinis, or clean or neat in English. Noun, which is the act of cleaning, is paglilinis in Tagalog, which is cleaning in English. In the context of contemporary spoken Philippine languages, morphology is essential for understanding how words are constructed and how meaning is conveyed. Studying morphology helps us understand the grammar and usage of these languages in everyday speech, providing insights into how speakers naturally form and understand words. I was told to report about an article entitled A Morphosyntactic Analysis of the Pronominal Systems of Philippine Languages. This was authored by Shirley in Dita. Accordingly, with approximately 150 living languages in the Philippines, there are just as many structures of the pronominal systems of these languages or pronominal system. This paper attempts to compare the morphosyntactic features of personal pronouns of 10 Philippine languages, which is Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Waray-Waray, Kapampangan, Bicol, Pangasinan, Kinaraya, and Ibanag. The first 9 are considered major languages, whereas the last is minor. Pronominals are universal component of human languages and are considered basic vocabulary or any given language. Specifically, personal pronouns are generally close class and are unaffected by borrowing or code switching. With this, it is hoped that a careful analysis of these features will shed light to the many controversial concerning Philippine languages. The research gap in this study is accordingly there is a lack of studies on the pronominal systems of Philippine languages, with previous research focusing on prototype reconstruction and dialectics. When you say prototype reconstruction and dialectics, it is a concept in cognitive linguistics, particularly in the study of categorization and semantics. The objective of the study aims to fulfill the gap in research by carefully analyzing the features of personal pronouns in these languages, which is the Philippine languages, to address the ongoing controversies which was mentioned a while ago. Also, the paper compares the morphosyntactic features of personal pronouns across 10 Philippine languages, including both major, which are the Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, and the minor, Ibanag, and other languages. When you say morphosyntactic features, these refer to the characteristics of language that involve both morphology, which is the study of structure of words, and syntax, the study of the arrangement of words in sentences. Morphosyntactic features refer to the characteristics of language that involve, again, both morphology, the study of the structure of words, and syntax, the study of arrangement of words in sentences. This is the same in the context of the Philippine languages. So here are some key morphosyntactic features. We have the tense, the aspect, mood, person or the point of view, number, the gender, case, voice, agreement or concord, and the last is the inflection. Under the first one that was discussed in the studies about the ergative absolutive analysis. Accordingly, the passage discusses the ergative absolutive analysis in language structure, contrasting it with more common, which is the nominative accusative distinction found in languages like Indo-European ones. In the Philippines, while accordingly, the nominative accusative system has traditionally been used to analyze Philippine languages, especially following Bloomfield's work in 1917, the ergative absolutive framework gained attention in the 1980s through studies by Payne, Starosa, and Gertz. The nominative accusative system is a type of grammatical case system used in many languages to mark the syntactic roles of nouns in sentences, particularly in relation to the verb. Accordingly, this system distinguishes between the subject of a verb and the object of a verb using specific cases called nominative case and the accusative case. In languages with nominative accusative system, the subject of the transitive verbs, when you say transitive verbs, these are the verbs that take a direct object. And in intransitive verbs, or the verbs that do not take a direct object, is marked with the nominative case. The direct object of a transitive verb is marked with the accusative case. For example, in the transitive verb form, the sentence is, the boy there is the nominative, reads the book. Again, here, the boy is the subject and is marked with the nominative case, while the book is the direct object and is marked with the accusative case. Example for the intransitive verb is, the boy sleeps. In this case, the boy is the subject of the intransitive verb. The intransitive verb sleeps and is marked with the nominative case. Only nominative because we do not have a direct object since this is an intransitive verb. The ergative absolutive framework is a type of grammatical case system found in some languages which marks the syntactic roles of nouns differently than the more common nominative accusative system. In an ergative absolutive system, the subject of an intransitive verb and the direct object of a transitive verb are treated with the same and are marked with the absolutive case, while the subject of a transitive verb is treated differently and is marked with the ergative case. For example, the man eats the apple. In this sentence, the man is the subject of the transitive verb, eats, and is in the ergative case, while the apple is the direct object and is in the absolutive case. An intransitive verb example we have here, the child sleeps. Here, the child is the subject of an intransitive verb and is in the absolutive case. Because again, the subject of an intransitive verb and the direct object of a transitive verb are treated the same. As you can see, in figure 1, the first row shows the core arguments of a canonical transitive. We have agent A and the object O. The object of the transitive clause or the patient and the sole argument of an intransitive clause or the subject in the second row are treated alike. That is why they both receive absolutive case marks. When you say canonical transitive, this refers to the standard or most typically type of transitive verb construction in a language, where the verb takes both a subject and a direct object. This structure follows the basic and expected pattern for transitive verbs in the language, aligning with the language grammatical norms. Here, as you can see in figure 2, is our nominative-accusative alignment. This is in contrast. Figure 2 below shows that the agent of a transitive clause and the subject of an intransitive clause are treated alike, thereby receiving the same case marks. The object of the transitive clause, on the other hand, gets a different treatment. Now, for the second, under the subtopics in the article, is the transitivity in Philippine languages. So, the paper compares transitivity in English and Philippine languages, noting that English determines transitivity by the number of complements a verb takes: monotransitive, ditransitive, or complex transitive. For example, for monotransitive, this is where the verb takes one direct object. For the sentence, she reads a book. Reads is a monotransitive verb because it requires only one direct object, which is a book, or the phrase a book. We also have an example for ditransitive. When you say ditransitive, the verb takes both a direct object and an indirect object. In the sentence, he gave her a gift. Gave is a ditransitive verb because it has two complements: the direct object, which is the phrase a gift, and the indirect object, which is the pronoun her. This is also an example of complex transitive. In this case, the verb takes a direct object and an additional complement, often an adjective or a noun that modifies or relates to the direct object. In the sentence, she painted the wall blue. Painted is a complex transitive verb because it has a direct object, which is the words the wall, and an additional complement, the word blue. That describes the state or quality of the direct object. In contrast, in Philippine languages, transitivity is determined by the type of arguments, or core or peripheral. For example, in intransitive construction with one core argument, in Tagalog, natulog ang bata. In English, the child slept. By the way, these sample sentences is illustrating how transitivity in Philippine languages is determined again by the type of arguments or core peripheral. So here, natulog, which is slept in English, is an intransitive verb, and ang bata, the child in English, is the core argument, which is a subject. That is essential to the verb's meaning. Here, for the example of intransitive construction with core arguments, kinuha ng bata ang libro. This is in Tagalog. In English, the English translation is, the child took the book. Kinuha, which is took in English, is a transitive verb. Ang bata, which is the child in English, is the core argument or the subject. And ang libro, the book in English, is the core argument or the direct object, which are both essential for the verb. Now, let's go to the methodology. According to the article, this study uses a 100,000 word corpus for qualitative analysis of linguistic phenomena, avoiding quantitative analysis of structure occurrences. And again, this only focus on the 10 said languages. The Philippine type languages exhibit some characteristics that are incongruent with other languages, like, for example, the English. For one, there appears to be a four-way distinction of person. First person, first plus second person, and the third person. I have here the matrix of the different personal pronouns. So we have here in table number 1, this is a Tagalog personal pronouns, okay? We have the first person, second person, and the third in its absolutive form, ergative or genitive form, oblique, and possessive form. We also have in table 2 the Cebuano personal pronouns. And first, second, and third person, we also have again the absolutive form, absolutive enclitic form, ergative genitive forms, and the oblique forms. Then in the third table, we have the Ilocano personal pronouns until the third person. And then we have here absolutive free form, absolutive enclitic form, ergative genitive form, oblique, and possessive form. In table 4, we have the Hiligaynon personal pronouns, again until third person, absolutive form, ergative form, the first form, ergative second form, and the oblique. In table 4, we have the Hiligaynon. Okay, we are done with Hiligaynon. I'm sorry for the duplication. So, I forgot the table 5. Anyways, I'll just provide the table 5 in after the report. I'll share it in our group chat. Table 6, we have the Kapampangan personal pronouns. Here, until third person again, we have the absolutive free form, absolutive enclitic form, ergative genitive form, and the oblique form. We also have, in table 7, the Bicol Naga personal pronouns until third person. We only have the absolutive, ergative, and oblique forms. In table 8, we have the Pangasinan personal pronouns until third person. We have absolutive free form, absolutive enclitic form, the ergative genitive form, and the oblique. We also have table 9 for Kinraya personal pronouns until third person. We have absolutive free, absolutive enclitic, ergative 1, ergative 2, and oblique. For table 10, we have Ibanag personal pronouns until third person again. We have the absolutive free, absolutive enclitic, ergative genitive, oblique, and possessive. The third subtopic is the general characteristics of personal pronouns in Philippine languages. According to the article, there are portmanteau pronouns in Philippine languages. That is a combination of ergative 1 and absolutive 2, where the former is the agent and the latter the patient in a clause. When you say portmanteau pronouns, These are pronouns that combine multiple grammatical features into a single form. The term portmanteau generally refers to a linguistic blend where one word combines parts of multiple words. But in the context of pronouns, it specifically means that a single pronoun encapsulates various grammatical roles or distinctions. In modern English, you, or for example, in modern English, the word you serves as both a singular and plural, and as both subject or function as both a subject and object pronoun, blending multiple grammatical features into one form. For example, in the singular subject form, you are my best friend. The word you here is the subject of the sentence and refers to one person. Another example, in the singular object, I saw you at the store. The word you is the object of the verb, and the word saw, the word you is the object of the verb saw and refers to one person. Here, this is an example of a word from Hiligaynon. The word is ako. Okay? Functions similarly as a first-person singular pronoun for both a subject and object. Of course, this is in the Philippine languages. Accordingly, portmanteau pronouns often combine multiple grammatical features such as person, number, and case into single form. So in this example, the ako here, the first example, the word ako nagluto, or ako nagaluto in English, I am cooking. The ako is the subject. In the second sentence, ginhulat mo ako, or in English, you waited for me. The function of the word ako in the second example is object. In the study, no, this is an example, the Tagalog word for mahal kita. The function of kita is ergative, first ergative or the and first ergative form and plus absolutive second form. In English, it's I love you. And in Ilocano, ay ayatin ka. The ka there is in ergative first person plus absolutive second person. Of course, in English, it's the same. I love you. So these are the sample of PL portmanteau. We have another example. Kaluguran da ka. The da is in ergative first person. The ka is absolutive second person. Again, it's I love you in English. That's in Kapampangan, if I am not wrong. And then we also have hinigugma ko ikaw. The ko there is ergative first person. The ikaw is absolutive second person. This is in Cebuano. We also have the distinctions in PL examples. So here, accordingly, as for the number, PL have three distinctions. It can be singular, dual, and plural. However, duality is evident only in Ilocano. Kapampangan and the other pan is considered or are considered antiquated in Tagalog. So in Iloilo, a duality is only evident in Iloilo. So here, agkararag. The ta there is in absolutive form. And then we also have there the munta kata kikami. Okay? The kata is absolutive. The kikami is oblique. In the dual pronoun ta, it refers to two people only, the addresser and the addressee. The ta in the Ilocano. When the doer is pluralized, the clause becomes agkararag. Tayo, which is plural inclusive. And agkararag kami for plural exclusive. Likewise, kata refers to two people only. In the second example, the speaker and the one spoken. Additionally, first-person plural in Philippine languages is further distinguished as inclusive or exclusive, as mentioned a while ago in the example. So another example, as evident in the free translation of sentences found in the article, let's see the following examples in Tagalog, both in Tagalog. So we have here, kakain kami, this is, in English, we will eat. This is excluding the addressee, no? And then, kakain tayo, that is including the addressee, no? Kami, excluding the addressee, tayo, including the addressee. Philippine languages pronouns do not mark gender distinctions. That's why we have the third person singular. Singular, both masculine and feminine genders. So in our examples, no, we have kalusaw na yaya. This is in Ibanag, if I am not wrong. So it's either he or she in English and her or him. Kasal na hiya, so he or she is already married, because again, there is no distinction between, there is no gender distinction. Finally, in Philippine languages distinguish four basic grammatical functions. If you notice in the examples provided a while ago in the different tables provided, absolutive, ergative, genitive, and oblique are mentioned. Accordingly, some languages may differ, though in the form of their absolutives. Some are free absolutives, and others are clitics. As for obliques, some languages use the same function to encode absolutive possessives, while others use a different form. So we have here, again, there are four basic grammatical functions in Philippine languages. Let's start with the absolutives. When you say absolutive, according to Trask, it is the case form which marks both the doer or experiencer of an intransitive and the patient of a transitive verb, and which contrast with the ergative. And some languages have two possible forms for the absolutives. You have the free and the enclitics. Accordingly, absolutives are free when they are the sole arguments in a clause, and are enclitics when they function as objects in dyadic transitives. The positions of absolutives are also vary cross-linguistically. So for example, free absolutives may function as response to question, as shown here in the example, no? So we have here, I do not know how to read, it's from Ibanag, no? But this example is, its function is to, may function as a response to a question. No? Sakan. This is absolutive first person, no? Which is in English, I did. Or as a sentence initial subject. So here we have here kami and si Kato, no? They are the initial subject of the examples provided. Kami, absolutive first, and the si Kato, absolutive still, no? This is in waray-waray. I forgot about the meaning of pan. Is it Pangasinan. Sorry, it's Pangasinan for pan. And then, absolutives also function as predicates in an identificational nominal clause. So we have here examples. Okay? Those in which the predicate provides specific identification for the entity expressed in the absolutive of the clause, as in hiya and isuna. Okay? So, they act as predicates. Okay? Hiya, isuna. He is the one who took the ball. Isuna, she is the one who forgot. Next, absolutive also function as predicates in classificational nominal clause. Here, mayaman si Kara in Pangasinan. They are rich. The absolutive si Kara is classified as the entity expressed in the predicate mayaman, which is rich in English. And then accordingly, absolutives are also topics in contrastive clause. So for example, kami buutan, hira maraot. So in English, we are nice, they are bad. And then, fifth, absolutives are the sole arguments or experiencer in intransitive constructions or the object or patient in a transitive construction. So for example, magbinisaya mi diri. This is in Cebuano, or we speak Cebuano in here. The mi there is the absolutive. This is the sample of absolutive as the sole arguments or experiencer in intransitive constructions. Another example. Accordingly, these are samples of absolutive as the object or patient in a transitive construction. So the word sila and the word sakan, they are the object or patient in a transitive construction. And then, in addition, in absolutives, some Philippine languages exhibit a peculiar syntactic feature, that is, the grammatical antecedent may co-occur with the pronoun. Like, for example, in Ilocano or I forgot if it's Ilocano or Ilonggo, then Kapampangan they require that the noun referent is present along with the pronoun use. So here in the example, okay, dinatangya i-earning. I do not know if I read it right. In English, its meaning is earning arrive. In the example, ya refers to earning. Okay? And then we also have another example, naturog da dagiti ubing. The da in the sample sentence refers to the children. So accordingly, the sentence become ungrammatical if the pronoun is removed. Of course, our that there is our pronoun, which is in absolutive form. Now, let's go to our second grammatical function, ergatives. When you say ergatives, these are simply defined as subject of a transitive clause. Ergatives function as agents of two types of transitives. It's either dyadic or triadic. When you say dyadic transitive verb, this involves two arguments, a subject, which is the doer of the action, and a direct object, which is the receiver of the action. So for example, this is, by the way, again, a dyadic transitive example. She kicked the ball. The verb kick requires two arguments, which are the she, the subject, and the ball, which is the direct object. Also, when you say triadic transitive verb, this involves three arguments: a subject, a direct object, and an indirect object, which is the recipient or beneficiary of the action. For example, he gave her a gift. The verb gave requires three arguments, which is he, the subject, her, the indirect object, and the phrase a gift, which is the direct object. So the dyadic transitives have two participants, subject and the direct object, while the triadic transitives involve three participants, the subject, the direct object, and the indirect object. These are the examples in the Philippine languages that will illustrate how ergatives are used as agents of transitive construction. So we have here from waray-waray, both from waray-waray, no? Ipapasyada ko kamo. Nakitan namun hira hagawas, no? Dako and namun are in ergative form. Okay? Again, this is in ergative form. Note that in the given examples here, the ergative or the erg arguments are generally post-verbal in distribution. When you say post-verbal, after the verb, as opposed to absolutive, which may occur in initial position in a clause. So, additionally, ergatives may also incliticize with the host word. When you say incliticize, this refers to the process by which a word or a morpheme, which usually a clitic, attaches itself to the end of another word, becoming dependent on that word for its pronunciation or meaning. So an enclitic is a type of clitic that is typically unstressed and phonologically bound to the preceding word, meaning it cannot stand alone and must attach to the word before it. So for example, this is the English example. The contraction apostrophe S in it is or it's, short for it is, can be considered an enclitic because it attaches to the preceding word it and relies on it for pronunciation. In Philippine languages example, especially in Tagalog, we have the ba. Ba is an enclitic used in forming questions like, pupunta ka ba? Or pupunta ka ba? Are you going in English? Again, ba is an enclitic that attaches to ka to indicate that the sentence is a question. Another example, the word da. Accordingly, it is an enclitic attached to the word binambaran. Okay? The word da, which is in, of course, ergative form. Genitives are morphologically identical with ergatives. As you noticed a while ago in the table shown, we have there, some of the tables showed genitives / ergatives because again, they are morphologically identical. It is with this morphologically synonymity that prompted some Filipinos to use the label gen to both ergative and genitive functions. And to distinguish the two, the genitive and ergative, the Philippine languages genitives are generally postnominals, whereas ergatives are postverbals. For example, in the genitive postnominal, ang bahay ng guro ay malaki. In English, the teacher's house is big. The words ng guro or of the teacher in English is a genitive phrase and follows the noun bahay, house in English, making it post-nominal. Another example, ergative post-verbal. In Tagalog, kinain ng bata ang mansanas. In English, the child ate the apple. Ng bata or by the child in English functions as an ergative, marking the doer of the action kinain or ate in English. It follows the verb, making it post-verbal. These are the examples provided in the article by Dita. He uses the following example in Ibanag to illustrate the distinction of the two grammatical points of the ergative genitive. We have there, again from both Ibanag, the examples clearly show that the items na in the first example and no in the second example function both as ergative and absolutive respectively. However, it is also clear that the ergatives function as agents of the transitive clauses and the gens or the genitives are possessors of the NPs. Okay? Next. Genitives as opposed to English, the Philippine genitives as opposed to English genitives, which are pronominals, is a prototypical possessive phrase in Philippine, a prototypical possessive phrase in Philippine languages is post-nominal. So, for example, ang bahay ko. The ko there is genitive, which is again post-nominal. However, some Philippine languages prefer an oblique construction to express possession. So we have here, when you say oblique construction, by the way, this refers to the use of prepositional phrases that often express relationships such as location, direction, or time, and can involve the use of oblique cases in languages that have them. In Philippine languages, or in the context of Philippine languages, oblique constructions usually refer to sentence structures where the noun phrase is marked by a preposition or oblique marker to indicate its role as an indirect object, a location, a beneficiary, or other functions that are not just subject or indirect object. For example, in the Philippine English, and of course, this is influenced by Tagalog, he gave the book to her. The phrase to her is an oblique construction, marking the indirect object with the preposition to. In this case, to her indicates the recipient of the action. Okay? Let's also consider the following examples in Tagalog and Hiligaynon. If you notice, the akin and akon are obliques, but they can also be used to encode genitives. Another, apparently, the Kapangpangan, if I am not wrong, utilizes the prenominal genitives. So, prenominal genitives over the postnominal. When you say postnominal, postnominal genitives, these are genitives typically follow the noun they modify. This is known as postnominal genitive structure. The possessive relationship is indicated by a marker or a case particle such as nang in Tagalog. This happens in many Philippine languages. So for example, bahay ng guro, or in English, the teacher's house. Here, the phrase ng guro, or in English, of the teacher, comes after the noun bahay, which is house in English, making it a postnominal genitive. When you say prenominal genitives place the genitive noun or pronoun before the noun it modifies. While this is very common in languages like English, the teacher's house, it is less common in Philippine languages, where the genitive typically follows the noun. For example, the teacher's house. This is in English. The word teachers comes before the house, making it a prenominal genitive. The second examples, these are the examples provided in the article. These are in Kapampangan. Again here, the Kapampangan utilizes the prenominal genitives over the postnominal genitives. Okay? And then, let's go to the fourth grammatical functions of pronouns, which is the obliques. Obliques are used to express direction towards a person or persons, or the transmission of an object towards the entity or party specified by the oblique pronoun. For example, here, this is from Ibanag. They denote the semantic role of source, as in for the Ibanag, no? This came from me. So the nyakan there is the oblique. Okay? From. I am not wrong. It's from, no? And then, another example. This is from Waray-Waray. Another example from Waray-Waray. Iglabog ini haiya. The haiya there is oblique, no? This also denote the goal semantic role, the goal of semantic role. Okay? And then in these examples, locatives also express the presence in terms of person in Tagalog, the word sa iyo, no? The sa iyo there is our oblique, to be with you in English. And then we also have nyakan. Nyakan is our oblique here. Again, obliques can also function as benefactives according to Rubino, 1997. These are words like patientive or recipient, the recipient of the action. And then, we also have other phenomena in Philippine languages pronouns. So aside from the various distributions of the four grammatical functions of pronouns, the absolutive, genitive, obliques, and the other one, there are also some noted features of Philippine languages that are accordingly worth investigating. So we have here, first, the homomorphy. This one distinct feature of pronouns in Philippine languages is that two sets, the ergatives and genitives, can be homomorphs. That is, they are both spelled and pronounced the same, but they have different meanings. In literature, some use the same case marking for both cases. For example, erg to mark both ergative and genitive, and ergen to refer to either of the two. So in this study, Dita distinguished the functions of erg and gen and have argued that the homomorphic items be labeled according to distinguish the function of the two. This paper or the paper maintains separate case marking for these two sets to illustrate homomorphy in Philippine languages. Again, in the following examples, you have there The word nga was used twice, but it has different functions. The first nga is ergative. The second nga is genitive. And the word da in Ilocano, the first da is ergative, and the second da is genitive. We also have these other examples, no? Data reports that in Ibanag, the first person absolutive enclitic and the third person singular ergative have the same morphological form, which is the word na. Okay? Phonologically, though, the two have notable difference. The absolutive is glottal stop. You will know that it is glottal stop because of the apostrophe, whereas the ergative is not. Hence, they can be considered more as homographs or heteronyms. The more apparent distinction of the two lies in their syntactic properties. The absolutive is the actor in an intransitive clause in the first example, whereas the ergative is the agent in a transitive clause, which is in the second example. Still, in Ibanag, the word na, these are homomorphs, or these homomorphs can also occur with each other if the ergative case is the agent and the absolutive case is the benefactive. Only one na appears in the sentence, only if one na appears in the sentence. The ergative, therefore, is not phonologically overt anymore. So if you see in the example. And then we have in the other phenomena the cliticization. Cliticization. Clitics are grammatical words that are unable to stand on their own phonologically, but must instead lean on another adjacent word. They must be incorporated into the prosodic structure of another word. Accordingly, pronominal clitics in Philippine languages exhibit various characteristics. Like we have Cebuano, Kapampangan, Pangasinan, Ilocano, Ibanag, and Kinraya are among the languages which demonstrates incliticization for absolutives. There are cases in which the ergative and the absolutive pronouns both incliticize with the host word. For example, here, this is in Ilocano. Is it Ilocano or Ilonggo? Arukupin. Nak. Nak. The N and the K, they cannot stand alone, no? That's why they have to lean on the word arakupen. Arakupen. Okay? This is evident in Ilocano. I do not know. Ilocano or Ilong? I forgot. And here, let's try to compare in the second examples, no? Let's compare the same utterance with the Tagalog and the Kapampangan, where neither of the arguments incliticize with the host word in the first and second examples. Okay? They did not incliticize because they can stand alone without leaning on the other word. Cliticization, in cliticization, now note that when they are attached to the host, words ending in vowel, the first person ko becomes morphologically covert and thus represented by the glottal stop, which is the apostrophe. On the other hand, the second person, still mu, can only be reduced to M but can never be omitted. This is accordingly another noteworthy feature of the Ibanag ergatives that concerns the singular forms of the first and second persons respectively. So we have here an example. Okay? We can omit the K sound, no? But they are still there, or especially for the M there. No, iba na. Next, we have also the hierarchy. According to Schachter, if I read it right, explains that in Tagalog, monosyllabic pronouns always precede disyllabic pronouns. For example, kilala ko sila. Okay? Mono to, let's go back. It's mono before disyllabic. So, ko is the mono, sila is the disyllabic. Another, but not, it should be mono before disyllabic, but not disyllabic before mono. So, you cannot say, kilala sila ko. It should be, kilala ko sila. Another for hierarchy, the patient precedes the agent in some Tagalog transitive construction. That is when the patient is monosyllabic and the agent is disyllabic. So because of that constraint, for example, nakita kanila. In this example, the monosyllabic ka, which is you in English, which is also the object of the word see, or see in English, appears before the disyllabic nila, they in English, which is the agent in the clause. Accordingly, when both pronouns are disyllabic, the agent precedes the patient. So here, kilala nila ako. Both the nila and ako are disyllabic. Accordingly, this constraint is also true for other Philippine languages like in waray-waray. No? For example, nababatian ka nira. The ka is monosyllabic. The nira is disyllabic. But again, you cannot say nababatian nira ka. It should be nababatian ka nira. Monosyllabic before disyllabic. Other phenomenon in Philippine languages pronouns is the person-dixis interface. According to McFarland, he explains that it is quite common in Philippine languages to use a deictic pronoun. Yes, if I read it right. In place of a personal pronoun. As in the case of Tagalog, ito or this in English instead of siya. Okay? So, let's consider this example. Okay? Magaling ang batang ito. Although the utterance is grammatically correct, it would have been polite to use the third person singular to refer to the child. Okay? Magaling ang batang ito. Another, as in, magaling siya in Tagalog. Okay? We also have, gusto ko siya. The siya there, referring to an object. It can be a shirt or a toy. Accordingly, present-day speakers of Tagalog have the tendency to use absolutive in third person for inanimate entities as well. So the more semantically accepted expression would have been a dexisto, specifically the word iyan for that in English. So in conclusion, this paper outlines the grammatical features of Philippine pronouns in 10 Philippine languages, highlighting their four-person distinction, three-number distinction, lack of gender distinction, and four grammatical functions. This paper addresses controversies in Philippine languages, Philippine language pronominals such as homomorphy, and cliticization, recommending further cross-linguistic studies of additional features. So, as an insight also in the study, it was really hard to somehow understand some of the terms mentioned and how they are being used in the sample sentences. But if you will just look deeply, you will really understand how technical, but at the same time, how beautiful it is, how unique is the or are uh, the technicalities of the Philippine languages. So, the reference, by the way, of this report is from the provided paper of or article of Ma'am Kalimbo, which is by Dita. And that ends my report. Thank you.